We all know that huge momentum is building for transformative necessary programs like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal, but very serious people always raise the question, how do we pay for it? There's one big obvious answer, and you'll hear more about it as we go on, which is make the rich finally pay their fair share in taxes. But there's also another huge pot of money that we really have to talk about, which is the huge amount of money that we spend on the military, police, and prisons, which perpetuate the legacy of racist violence that this country has waged for centuries against black and brown people within these borders and around the world. So y'all know we spend too much on the military. We spend more than the next 7 biggest spenders combined and more than 140 other countries all put together. The Pentagon's budget is more than half of what Congress allocates every year. It dwarfs all discretionary non-military spending on public programs that actually meet human needs. It's been this way for years, especially since the Budget Control Act of 2011, which links higher domestic spending to increases in military spending. This year is no different. Congress just passed a bipartisan budget deal for 2020, which raises this year's Pentagon spending by $17 billion, up to $738 billion. This was seen as a compromise with Trump's even bigger proposal for $750 billion. Everything else gets just $632 billion. This deal lasts until the Budget Control Act expires in 2021, which is a huge opening for progressives to fight for a budget that finally decouples social spending from military spending. So what's wrong with the military budget? Doesn't it protect us from the terrorists who hate our freedoms? You know the answer to that. Our disastrous wars only create more violence and instability around the world. Our military is now stretched thin over 40% of all countries in the world, with more than over 800 overseas bases. The Pentagon now spends more than almost any time since World War II without any real military threat that can compare to that. This is not sustainable if we're ever going to deal with the accelerating crises we're facing, like inequality and climate disruption. So the National Priorities Project is proposing a budget for demilitarization that could safely shift as much as $350 billion away from the Pentagon every year by ending the endless wars, closing 60% of foreign bases, cutting unnecessary weapons, and much more. This would make the whole world safer. We'd no longer be adding to long-term unrest in the Middle East and other parts of the world, and it would also be hugely helpful in funding the big progressive ideas we're all fighting for. To put that in perspective, the US has blown almost $6 trillion on wars in the 2 decades since 9/11. That's more than the $4.5 trillion it would cost to transform the US energy grid to 100% renewable energy in 10 years. So there's a lot we could do with this. But that's not all. US military spending is deeply tied to its analogs here at home: militarized policing, immigration enforcement, and mass incarceration. In 2016, the more expansively defined militarized budget, including these types of domestic spending, amounted to 64% of discretionary spending, much more than the 53% consumed by the traditionally defined military budget. So what does this spending look like? We can see it in the aggressive rise in militarized police violence, mostly against black and brown people. Since the creation of the 1033 program in 1991, the Pentagon has transferred $6.8 billion in surplus military weapons that have no place in our communities, letting law enforcement turn city streets into war zones. Meanwhile, federal prison funding has multiplied by 10 since 1976, and the US now has one of the highest mass incarceration rates in the world. Spending on militarized immigration enforcement agencies has skyrocketed past $17 billion since 1976, funding more brutal border policing, immigration raids, and mass deportations that tear communities apart. All this does not promote security. It's state-sponsored terror against the most vulnerable people in our society. These militarized domestic programs violently enforce the profits of a wealthy few at the expense of the many. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said that a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Beyond 2020, it's time to change course with a unified moral budget to demilitarize America, at home and abroad. Progressives have an historic opportunity to divest hundreds of billions of dollars from state-sanctioned violence and free up resources to reinvest in real urgent human needs that match the crises that we're facing today. That would make our communities safer, even more secure in the ways that really matter, and it's just the right thing to do.